Next, it's a featherweight matchup.
Stubbsy, yourself and one of our writers, Chris, has been playing UFC 2 an awful lot, and I gather it's rather good.
It is very, very good. I have really enjoyed my time with it.
I mean, you know the names of some of the people because you wrote like a little tips thing, and I only knew one of those people, so you certainly know them more than I do.
Well, yeah, but most people will know like Ronda Rousey and Conor
See,
McGregor.
I know who she is. See, I didn't know that one. No.
He's the Irish one who lost, like the two
I
cover
did see
stars.
stuff about that.
The two cover stars both lost their last fights,
Oh,
which
did
is
they
quite
really?
funny. Yeah.
Oh dear. Bad luck, that is.
Yeah, that's unfortunate for them. But that doesn't take away from the game itself. The game itself is fantastic. But this one is good. Like, the thing that kind of first struck me is, I don't know if you played the beta, but on the beta it's like, it introduces you to this, like, you know, like EA games do these days, where you've got the sort of cinematic opening into a kind of scripted game. It does that, and the first thing you think is, like, this looks really good. Like, visually, this is impressive. It's one of the better looking games that I've seen.
To be fair, like, whenever EA do sports games that are... Well, to be fair, all their sports games are good looking, but I remember even, like, Fight Night last gen looked amazing for its time. Whenever they... Because they're focusing on the... It's just two people, yeah, I suppose, plus the ref, but they always look pretty good, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, what's really cool on this one is obviously it's a... Like, MMA is a very violent sport. And you can see marks like develop, like cuts and bruises and stuff develop throughout the fight, and it generally does look like a proper fight would.
Right.
Like if the animations were slightly improved, I feel that's a little bit where it's let down on visual style. But if that was slightly improved and the way you play was slightly different, people probably would struggle to tell the difference. I think visually wise, it doesn't look too different from what an actual televised UFC fight looks like.
Christ. I mean, you say about the animations, do you mean, is that because of the fact you're inputting commands? And just that it's not like it's not badly animated, it's just because of the fact you're hitting the button, so to speak, and it's changing them in a perhaps unnatural way.
Yeah, the animations themselves look fine, but it's the way that combos kind of...
So connections and stuff.
Yeah, it's like it doesn't feel quite as smooth as...
Okay.
Like, if you're in a real fight, you can unload a left hand, a right hand, and then a left hand within, like, a matter of seconds.
Right.
But here, because you've got to press different buttons, there's always that little gap that seems a little bit unnatural. But, I mean, getting rid of that is going to be near on impossible when you've actually got someone inputting.
I was going to say, it took years and years for FIFA even for to get the sort of physics, the natural feeling of like you can't strike the ball properly in that position because you couldn't. But what's the speed of the game like in UFC? Because I always would it be fair to say UFC can be a slower paced sort of pugilistic sport, or
it totally can be.
Am I wrong? Yeah, but it's not always then.
It very much depends on how you and your opponent, if you're playing against a real person, play. Like, there is nothing stopping you kind of both going all out, swinging all your punches, and just constantly going on that. But there is a stamina meter, which is like what you would expect.
Is it visible?
Yes.
It's like a bar, so to speak. Okay.
And the more punches
you turn that off, just out of interest. Sorry, I didn't
there is
mean to interrupt you there. But I
in
just
practice mode, you can. Like, in practice mode, you can have no stamina. But
because I guess that shows off how good looking it is, that it's like, no, you can tell you're flagging because that's quite cool.
But like, if that runs out, then you become a lot slower, and your like punches don't really do much. So you kind of need to back off a little bit and recover your stamina, which kind of slows the pace down a little bit. Because there is like, kind of like in real UFC, there is times where there's a big combo and then like both players sort of back up and just sort of chill out for a bit. And it also depends on what fighters you're playing. If you're like two big hitters, then it's going to be slightly faster paced than, say, people who are really good on the mat, because otherwise you're just going to be sprawling around on the mat, which to someone who's watching probably isn't quite as interesting as two massive guys throwing punches at each other.
More wrestling than boxing at that point, I guess.
Yeah. So it kind of depends on what fighter you're playing with and how you yourself want to play it. So it can be really fast or it can be quite slow. But yeah,
how complicated is the wrestling part of it? Because that's one thing I remember, like as someone who was just very much passing, more of a sports fan than a UFC fan at the time, I found the sort of, I guess generally the grappling and the submission stuff was like, Jesus, this is very complicated. What's it like here?
It's quite simple. I
Really?
managed to pick it up. You pick up the basics very easily.
Okay.
Like if you're standing and you want to go for a takedown, I think it's LT and the right analog stick. And then you push the right analog stick in a direction to transition. So say I've just done a single leg takedown on you, and I want to sort of move onto your back, so I'm like clinging your back so I could look for like a choke hold.
Right.
That sort of hold the analog stick in the right direction. And if you manage to hold it for long enough and your opponent doesn't counter, then that's how you move around. Where it gets more complicated is the countering stuff, and I haven't quite figured all that out yet. But I think you can block people's moves while you're grappling if you move the analog stick in the direction that they're trying to move. And then submissions themselves, if you're in the submission, so you're like being the one who's been attacked, you need to move the analog stick like either up, down, left or right to try and escape. And it shows on the screen which way you're moving. And if you're doing the submission hold, you need to move it in the same direction to block their escape. So like there's an inch on the screen where if you're trying to escape, you've got to hold it long enough to reach the edge of that box.
Yeah, I want to say that's very similar to the first game.
Yeah.
I remember some of that. As you were describing it, it came back to me a bit, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so that's that. And like what I kind of found is I did manage to get a couple of online games. I found that people always tried to go for knockouts. So if you can master the submission system, then I think you're in with a very good chance providing you can lock one in. Because I think it feels like at the minute at least, people don't really know how to do it. But that's the thing with UFC, you can never really say how long a fight is going to last because one big punch or kick to the head within the first 10 seconds can knock you down, and then a jump on you and punch in the face. That's game over.
At Mike Stubbsy, that's you on Twitter. I'm at GBSurf, and go to patreon.com/GodIsAGeek. Otherwise, we'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Should have backed the God is a Geek Patreon.